I mean, we're talking about transforming our entire economy. We're transforming the energy industries, automotive industries, our buildings. It's a really interesting story how California has become a leader on climate policy and dealing with climate change. It really comes from two things. One is that it's an outdoor state. People like to spend a lot of time outdoors, so they're more sensitive to the environment. But the other is air pollution. California, because of the air pollution, was given special authority by the federal government and was allowed to do more aggressive policies than the rest of the country. That's why we started looking at electric vehicles. That's why we started using more electrification for all kinds of purposes. So now the motivation is actually pretty mixed. Most of the things we're doing are motivated as much by air pollution as it is by climate change. At the end of the day, California is only 1% of the problem in terms of the world. Only 1% of CO2 emissions in the world come from California. So California could wipe out all of its greenhouse gases, and it really wouldn't make much difference. And so what California is doing is being a model and a leader. What California is experiencing is being experienced in many parts of the world. In fact, many parts of the world suffer much more than California because they don't have the resources to recover, the resources to deal with the wildfires, the resources to deal with drought. You know, we go and build desalination plants, which are expensive and use lots of money, but Bangladesh can't do all that. Africa can't do all that. And so, you know, the effects, even though we might have greater effects, the real implications for economy and well-being and lifestyles is far worse in many other countries of the world. So California has been gradually putting together a set of policies and strategies, and we put it all together into a single scoping plan. And this scoping plan looks at every aspect, you know, the entire economy, about how to reduce greenhouse gases. And, you know, pieces of it were very controversial, but it laid out how do we get to net zero emissions in 2045? And that's a really big, heavy lift. But we're, you know, piece by piece, we're putting the regulations and the incentives and the policies in place. We have a requirement that all light duty vehicles, all passenger cars and SUVs must be zero emitting by 2035. We have a similar rule that just lags it a little bit with trucks. So we're about to adopt a rule that says all trucks must be zero emitting by 2036, including those big long haul trucks. Let me tell you, if we get close to net zero in 2045, I'll be very impressed. There are huge challenges. I mean, one of it just is got to build a massive amount of new electricity, because not only do we have all the normal electricity needs, but now we're going to electrify vehicles, we're going to electrify trucks. You know, just think electricity, got to build all these transmission lines. With electric vehicles, it depends on all these critical materials and minerals, like where is it going to come from and how much is it going to cost? So the cost of batteries had been going down forever. And then last year they actually went up. So if that is just a blip, that's good. But if the costs of batteries don't continue going down, this will be a hit to the economy, and it will cause a lot of backlash and a lot of opposition, you know, for good reason. One of the big challenges is with the electricity supply. Where does it come from? And there's a big push to have more solar energy, of course. And the question is, should it be at central facilities where you have large scale and produce large amounts of electricity, or do you want it more distributed on rooftops? We're working through all these issues and a lot of lessons learned. We're learning where the problems are, where the opportunities are, what are the cost implications, and the political aspects of it, frankly. There's California, and there's Europe, and there's China, all really clearly headed towards zero emission. China more in some sectors, not entirely, still have a lot of coal. But certainly in vehicles, they're way ahead of the rest of the world on electric vehicles. So we need to be thinking about exchanging insights and lessons learned. California really has a huge impact globally. Other countries and regions around the world all imitated. They came to California to see how we did it. China, India, Europe, all those countries. We had delegations coming all the time and still do to see how California is doing it. There's a lot of concern globally of what the U.S. does. The protectionism that's been happening lately, some of the geopolitics. So we in California, we fly below the radar on that. So we have, in a sense, more credibility or more of a willingness of these other countries to work with us, and regions and states to work with us, because we're not enmeshed in that geopolitics. It's very clear that California and many others are turning around investments and use of energy in a way that will lead us to reducing climate change, certainly slowing climate change. Like just electric vehicles, for instance, we are seeing electric vehicles starting to gain huge market share. And it's increasing at a steep rate. The industry is absolutely committed to electrification. And now we're seeing the trucking industry doing the same thing. We're seeing a phasing out of coal that's been going on for a while in most places. There's blips like in Europe with the Ukraine war and, reverting back a little bit to coal. But I think overall, the commitment to renewable energy, the commitment to electrification of vehicles, that's a done deal. And it's really just how fast it happens and how broadly across the globe it happens. So, you can worry that we're not going to be able to restrain the climate change to 1.5 degrees or maybe even 2, but we're going to do a pretty good job. And so, yes, there's going to be disruptions, bad things are going to happen, but we are going to avert the worst for sure. The question is, how fast are we going to go on that trajectory?